Okay, so this book changed everything I thought I knew about the Dark Tower series. There's a part in this book that comes completely out of left field, and after reading The Wind Through the Keyhole, which I fucking hated, I was a little bit worried because I was thinking, oh no, what if the series is going to spiral down the drain from this point on? Is it just going to continuously get worse and worse? Because I was enjoying it up until that point. But this brought me back on board. This is a return to greatness as far as I'm concerned. The revelation at the end of this book, in like the last kind of 20 pages, it was a genuine jaw-dropping moment for me. And we're going to be talking about the events that happen in this book, the ending, all of that stuff. Today we're going to be reviewing Wolves of the Calla by Stephen King. So this book kind of felt a little bit like a spaghetti western, didn't it? You've got a group of gunslingers that are riding through town. They're on their way somewhere when they get recruited by a small village to defend them from a larger evil. And, it was like the Magnificent Seven in Midworld. I think after reading this book, maybe a lot of people would have felt frustrated, especially after Wizard and Glass was just backstory, right? And it was a massive, chunky book, and it was just pure backstory. And then The Wind Through the Keyhole was just pure backstory. I mean, it does start to feel like, we've read 2,000 pages at this point, and in distance, we've probably traveled about 4.5 miles. At some point, we gotta start getting a move on. We gotta. Apparently, there's I can't remember, something to do with a tower or something. And even though I myself had complained in the last book that we're just not making any progress, I have to say this side quest was one that I really enjoyed. Just as a kind of standalone novel, I would have enjoyed this book. So this book opens in a small town in Midworld called Calla Bryn Sturgis, where a group of farmers are really concerned about the return of the wolves. And at this point, we don't really know what the wolves are. Are they actual wolves that are running around on all fours? Or are they people that are wearing wolf masks? Or, what? Are they just a gang known as the wolves? We don't know at this point. It's kind of ambiguous. But we just know they are dangerous and they have some kind of power where they periodically they come into town, they snatch up sets of twins, and Calla Bryn Sturgis has an unusual proportion of twins, and they bring them back, and one of them is ruined. They're physically and mentally impaired, and they also grow to just an enormous size. One of the memorable opening scenes is when one of the former children, who is ruined, called Tia, is being used in place of a mule or like a donkey, and she's turning over the land as her twin brother, is kind of riding her or guiding her across the land. I'm not a farmer. I don't know what the terms are. And there's a scene later on where Eddie says, like, but you're riding your sister, right? Yeah, she's massive. She's really good at this. Yeah, but that's your sister, though. By the way, I am going to be speaking about spoilers, all of the events that happen in this book. I'm going to be talking about the ending and everything. So if you haven't read this book, what are you doing here, mate? You gotta go. Seeing a young woman being used in place of a mule was just one of those kind of, wait, what moments? Just really set a dark tone for the rest of the story. And the second wait, what moment, I just call it wait, what moment, was when Father Callahan showed up. So if you haven't been watching my other reviews of Stephen King, one of my favorite books from Stephen King that I've read over the course of this year was Salem's Lot. And one of the, I don't want to say complaints, but one of the comments that I made about the book is that I would have liked to have seen more Father Callahan. So you can imagine how happy I was to see when they were calling him, I think at first they were calling him just Callahan, and I was like, wait a minute, it can't be, is it? What are you doing here, man? It's like when you're on vacation and you see a friend and you're like, wait, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You know, and it was just so satisfying. I really was so happy to see Father Callahan. And what made me even more happy was when I started to realize that, oh, Father Callahan is actually a bigger part of this story. You know, he's not just a side character. He kind of is, but he's a major side character. I'd say so far in my journey to the Dark Tower, this has been my most satisfying example of connecting the dots of the multiverse. Absolutely just loved it. And seeing Father Callahan interact with the characters from a series that I like, brilliant. And speaking of which, I really enjoyed the quartet arriving in the village of Calla Bryn Sturgis, because from the beginning we have witnessed Eddie and Susanna and Jake kind of slowly develop their skills over time. They're starting from absolute novices, you know, people that have never held a gun before, and now they are fully fledged gunslingers. They are the finished article, and we see some fantastic examples of this. But watching them ride into town and seeing them through fresh eyes as a gang of gunslingers, it's not like Roland's up here and Eddie's down here. They are all gunslingers. And seeing the people's reaction in Calla Bryn Sturgis to this gang that we've seen develop over time, brilliant. I'll give you an example of how we see how they're fully fledged. The people of Calla Bryn Sturgis are a little bit skeptical, you know? Are these the real deal? Are these the real deal? So they're asked to kind of give a demonstration of their worth. Roland throws up some plates into the air and he calls Jake's name. Jake pulls out his Ruger and like quick as a flash. And then the other gunslingers, Eddie and Susanna, kind of catch the shards of the plates. It's so slick, so smooth. And it just made me think, how confident would you feel if you saw this? I mean, that's the kid. The kid can do that. What can the adults do? I got shivers at that point. It was like, wait, you're afraid of these wolves. We are the danger. We are the danger. Still, even after this, not everyone is convinced. And then we come to the first scene, which for me personally, I did not enjoy. Please let me know if you disagree with this. It didn't seem like it fit with Roland's character. Can you guess what I'm going to say? It's the scene where Roland does a dance and dances the Kamala. Every now and then, we see Roland kind of get in touch with his humanity and reveal another layer of himself. And that's usually quite endearing, you know? Like, for example, he doesn't really have that much a good sense of humor. He's not really a thoughtful person, but over time we see him start to fall in love with these characters. We learn more about his backstory with the love of his life and his mother and why he is the way he is, and we get to see him kind of come out of his shell and embrace the lighter side of life. And this was the first time where I ever said to myself, all right, Roland, you know, go back in the shell a little bit. You know, you don't have to come all the way out of the shell. When he was dancing, and the beat in my mind just sounded so upbeat. You know, he's like, "Come Kamala, come rice fella, come Kamala, come." It reminded me of that song. What's that? I hate that song as well. The one that goes, "Come my baby, come my baby, you're my butterfly, sugar baby." No, Roland, don't dance to that. I don't even want to see you tapping your feet. And to make things even worse, the next day when Roland wakes up and he is just aching, I don't think I realized how old and what a toll this journey is taking on him and on his body. He's riddled with arthritis. He's struggling to get out of bed. And it just really made me feel sad for him, especially when he says that his fear is that he starts to become a burden to the quartet. So, I mean, can you imagine Roland, who the rest of the quartet really idolize and look up to? He protected them and defended them and taught them and has been guiding them. And I tell you, I have a fear that Roland doesn't make it to the tower and the rest of the quartet do. I think that might happen with Roland. I'm really nervous that it does, actually. That he just watches them go, oh, I can't even think about it. Can't think about it. Can't think about it. One of the aspects of this book that I really loved was Callahan's backstory, right? Because it acted as both an epilogue for Salem's Lot and a prologue for Wolves of the Calla. And so, yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It's like 200 pages of this book are just dedicated to Callahan's story in the wake of the events of Salem's Lot, which again, I loved Salem's Lot. So it was great to read about that. He's working in a soup kitchen by day and sneaking up on vampires by night, hunting them down. Epic. There's also a great tie-in with Hearts in Atlantis because in Hearts in Atlantis, you've got the low men in yellow coats, and they show up again in this book in Callahan's backstory, and they're using the missing pet posters and everything. And again, every time I find a tie-in with the other books that I've read from the Stephen King Dark Tower multiverse, it's just so, I keep saying satisfying. I'm overusing that word, but it really is. Now, as much as I love Father Callahan, there was one thing that I found a little bit disappointing, and that was his pro-life stance. Obviously, look, if you're pro-life, fine. And also, he's a Catholic priest. Fine, you know, I'm not going to get all political about it, but what I'm saying to you is, this is a very unique circumstance, I think, right? First of all, Susanna is pregnant with a demon. We don't know what this demon's going to do to Susanna. We don't know what this demon's going to do once it gets out. You know, this is a demon that we're talking about. And the fact that Father Callahan was willing to turn all of Calla Bryn Sturgis against the quartet if they were thinking about aborting the demon, that just made me think, you know, your thinking is off. The thing that's crazy about it is that he's willing to sacrifice himself and all of the children of Calla Bryn Sturgis, all for the life of one demon. Come on, make that make sense. I mean, that just seems extreme. And Eddie Dean agrees with me. And while we're on that topic of Susanna's pregnancy, I thought it was really interesting. It's still, you know, quite mysterious to me. It's clear that this is going to be a massive, massive part of the next book. Susanna has developed another alter ego in Mia. And so I'm interested to know more about Mia and her backstory, like where's she come from? I just know that pretty much the whole of the next book is going to be about this pregnancy, this baby. It's going to be about Susanna, Mia, and the demon child. Eddie seems to have grown a lot in this book. Originally, Eddie was seen as like a kind of, in my mind, like a comedy sidekick. A little bit, but now he's grown in his abilities. He's no longer addicted to any substances. He's also grown just as a man. And when he and Roland speak now, it's no longer master and student. It doesn't feel like that. It's not like Jedi and Padawan. It is just two gunslingers conferring and making a plan. And I feel like probably in Roland's mind, Eddie has fully stepped into Cuthbert's shoes now. And Eddie actually proves this too when he steps through the portal in the cave and he heads back to New York and he heads back in time. And in the Tower bookstore, he comes face to face with Andolini. And if you remember, Andolini was in the drawing of the three, the guy that got his face blown off and then got eaten by the lobstrosities. Whereas before, Andolini was seen as this real threat, you know, like, it's Eddie Dean, you know, although he confronted him at the time, he didn't really want no part of it to begin with. And now it's like Andolini's here, Eddie's up here in terms of ability to do damage. I mean, Eddie is just throwing Andolini and his little stooge around, just absolutely dominating them. And there's even a part where Calvin Tower is looking at Eddie and going, oh my God, he's worse than them. He's right. I didn't like Calvin Tower, by the way. The first time we met Calvin Tower was in the drawing of the three, was it? No, it wasn't in the drawing of the three. It was in the Wastelands. And this is where Jake goes into the book tower. That was the first time we met Calvin Tower. And I actually thought he was okay back then. He seemed like this wise, older guy that was imparting some of his wisdom on Jake. And seeing him interact with Eddie now, I just kept thinking, oh, what an idiot, you know? He's one of these guys that just can't conceive of a world where he isn't the smartest guy in the room. His arrogance makes him stupid. And yeah, I just couldn't stand him. I don't even know if that was what was intended, but I was just like, just shut up. I really enjoyed the villain, what I would consider to be the major villain of the story, which was Andy the robot. He was a great villain. I thought he was a really original villain. I have to admit though, I did kind of see it coming that Andy was going to be the traitor in the end, only because generations and generations of these children are being betrayed by someone, it seems. And so I just thought to myself, all right, well, what's the constant here? And it was a bit obvious to me that he was going to be a traitor in the end. But still, seeing him playing with the children after it is confirmed that he's the traitor, and having them all love him and trust him, and that was pretty eerie. Another aspect of the book that I really enjoyed was the Sisters of Ariza. And I loved the weapons that they used, the plates that are sharpened on one end, and even the plates have got like a history and a kind of cultural heritage. And yeah, I thought that was great. It's such a unique weapon to be using. I also really liked seeing the gunslingers using the plates and just having a natural ability with it. And then when the battle finally takes place and the Sisters of Ariza are showing up and they're throwing out these plates like frisbees and it's just lopping off the wolves' heads, and they're like fantastic visuals. And the plates weren't the only unusual weapons that were being used. There were also sneeches, which, I mean, these things are out of Harry Potter, right? But they're different because these things are like grenades rather than things you have to catch in a pointless sport where nothing else matters except for capturing the golden snitch. I mean, that's the only thing that matters, isn't it? I mean, if you could be down 99-0 and you just catch the golden snitch and you win. So everyone else is just wasting their time, really. But, you know. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Quidditch. Put that to one side. These sneeches are, they're like grenades. And then also, it seems like the wolves are dressed as Doctor Doom from Marvel, I think it's Marvel, and they're holding lightsabers. And this is the point where I start to question the book just before the reveal, and I'm thinking, is this not plagiarism? And then after the battle, it starts to make a little bit more sense when, and I can't explain to you how much this blew my mind when Father Callahan discovers that He is a fictional character in a book called Salem's Lot, written by a writer called Stephen King, who he's never heard of, by the way. Like, this just blew my mind when this happened. Because I don't know what the implications of this are now in the next books. Oh, is Stephen King going to show up in the next book? Am I going to meet Stephen King in his own book? And how's that going to play out? I mean, this book had golden snitches in it from Harry Potter. Is J.K. Rowling going to be in it? Bloody Daniel Radcliffe? You know, are they going to go to Hogwarts? Do you know what I'm saying? How is this? This is what I'm saying when this blew my mind when this happened. It also kind of explains why the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz was in Wizard and Glass. That really confused me at the time, but now it kind of makes a bit more sense. Seriously though, I've never had an experience that just came this far out of left field. This is something that, in my opinion, only Stephen King can get away with, you know? I can't imagine another author writing something like this without rolling my eyes so far in the back of my head that I see my brain. Now, I heard that some people hated this and actually quit the series because of this, but I liked it. And because of that, I'm so excited to read Song of Susanna and just find out what's going to happen, you know? I have no idea. I have no idea which... It's just been blown open. I have no idea which direction this story is going to go in. And actually, I'm going to start reading it as soon as I've published this video. But first of all, let's get to the ratings. Okay, so let's start with plot. I'm going to give the plot 4 stars. I really loved the quartet riding into town, getting hired by the people of Calla Bryn Sturgis to help them to get rid of the wolves. Like I said before, I easily could have read this as a standalone novel, but I would have been a bit confused about the ending. But characters, I'm going to have to give it 5 stars out of 5. Father Callahan is one of my favourite Stephen King characters from one of my favourite Stephen King books. The only thing that could have satisfied me more is seeing Trash Can Man from The Stand show up or something like that, you know? Maybe. It could still happen. I don't know. And obviously seeing him interact with Roland and Eddie Dean and everyone, and Andy was a great villain. 5 stars out of 5. For setting, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. We're getting really deep into Midworld now, and we're learning more about its history and more about the rules that kind of govern the magical elements or that govern the multiverse. We're learning more and more about that now. It's becoming both... We're getting more information, and the more information we get, it's making it more mysterious. For originality, I'm actually going to give it 3.5 stars because I feel like this format of this story has been done before with Seven Samurai and the Magnificent Seven. And so, you know, this just felt as though it's got a new, fresh coat of paint. Overall, I'm going to give this book 4.5 stars out of 5. And I'm so relieved because after this book, which I really didn't like, I was so nervous that it was just going to spiral and it was just going to get worse and worse. But no, it was just a little blip, and we're back on course. We're back on the path of the beam. And I can't wait to see what happens next. Now, if you wasn't aware, I'm actually reading and reviewing the entire Dark Tower multiverse, which consists of 23 books. And this was book 20 in my 23-book journey to the Dark Tower. Next up is Song of Susanna. If you'd like to see my review for this book, then you can click up here. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and happy reading.